You're listening to Head to Head, a Star Wars podcast. Two fans, two generations, all things Star Wars begins now.
All right, hello everybody. I'm Eric Vansel.
I'm Daryl Sanders.
And we're your hosts for this show. So it looks like what we actually got to see was the soft premiere of the new season of The Mandalorian. I mean, first of all, I want to welcome, we got some new subscribers that have since joined us, which is cool. We basically stream live every Monday and every Friday at 8 p.m. Eastern. Of course, if you're watching this, you see that it's actually Tuesday that we're doing it live because scheduling issues, but generally speaking, it's every Monday and every Friday. And we just have a discussion, and then we invite you all to chat in and join us in the discussion. It just becomes us hanging out and talking Star Wars. So yeah, man, I mean, I have to admit, overall, just right out the gate, just so it's not a mystery to everybody, I mean, I absolutely loved this episode. I was just really into it. And it's amazing because it really shows how cool the character of the Mandalorian Din Djarin is. It's kind of like when you see that after a while, you're like, man, they actually did a really good job creating this character who has his own identity, because in The Mandalorian, I mean, obviously, like we said, we all thought it was going to be basically a Boba Fett show, and then you find out, no, it's a new character, and then, you're seeing him in the Mandalorian armor, and you're like, I kind of wish it were Boba Fett, though, and then finally, Boba Fett does show up in Season 2, and he somewhat steals the thunder away from Din a little bit, because now you're getting in a way which you've always wanted. But I have to say that you almost get the opposite effect in this show, because, by now I'm sure everybody, at least anybody that would be watching this, has probably seen it. And you just have this situation where the entire thing was pretty much how Din is going to join with Boba Fett and become part of this battle. And what they were doing was giving us a completely Mandalorian-centric episode to give us the backstory of, how this came to be. And you almost expected Din to be in a bacta tank to let us know, but even though this is happening in real time. And man, there's just so much to unpack in this episode. Did you watch it more than once?
No, I haven't. I probably will, though, again, like before tomorrow.
But, yeah, I was trying to, because again, man, there is so much to unpack in this episode. I'm hoping I remember everything, it's like, I mean, every scene.
Course, of course, we're not going to be able to take everything, but man, I mean, first of all, I find it hilarious that, this is like one of the best episodes of Boba Fett, and it had Boba Fett. It was not even in it. It was hilarious.
Yeah.
So
exactly.
I mean, it's weird. And like you said, it's basically felt like you were watching the premiere of season 3 for Mandalorian, and it's crazy because at some point I keep expecting Boba Fett to show up like in the very beginning, and then after a while, I don't even want him to show up. I'm like, well, screw it. Let me just continue just watching this
because it was so compelling.
Yeah, I mean, it really was, and it really does give you a juxtaposition, though, of the two shows, like within one show, which I thought that was kind of cool and interesting as well.
Yeah, I mean, and basically, one of the things that I thought was really cool about the show was the fact that it gave you some background on some things. Well, it was almost like a little bit of an epilogue, more so than what we got in season 2 of The Mandalorian. Because, if you remember at the end of season 2, that was the whole big Luke Skywalker scene and all that. And then, of course, after that, that's when you get the setup for the Book of Boba Fett, where you see Boba and Finn kill Bib Fortuna and, they go on, right? But this almost gives you, okay, well, while that's happening, here's what's happening with Din. It's almost like this would have been more of an appropriate epilogue for him. Now, granted, they couldn't, do all that in a post-credit scene or something, but I thought it was cool that they caught us up on that, and they were giving us pretty much, okay, here's what's going on, but and what's going to happen, I think, for the next episode now is everything's going to meet.
Yeah, everything's gonna kind of come to a head. Um, yeah, I mean, I'm gonna just start off with, Mando kind of pops up. He has a bounty. He goes in, and you really once again kind of see how bounty hunters really, act. And I think this is kind of, in some ways, synonymous to some bounty hunters where, they just realize it's a job. So it's nothing personal. It's nothing like that. They try to be cool to people. He comes in, finds the guy. He doesn't want to come quietly. Things get a little rough. He ends up lopping his head off and bagging it and trying to get out of there. But in the process of lopping his head off, and he lops it off with the dark saber, which was cool.
Yeah, that was cool. I mean, right away you see that he has possession of the dark saber, which was really
which I
nice.
was wondering. I was wondering at what point, like, does he still have it or what? But yeah, he did, because he eventually brought out the spear that he kind of had.
Yeah.
And then he eventually brought out this dark saber. But once he kind of does that and he tries to leave, the rest of the goons and minions were trying to, like, hey, they're trying to hold him back. And he's like, look, there's a bunch of money in there. I have no claim to it. It's yours. He's no longer your employer because he's dead now. You guys have at it. I mean, he's just so cool and smart about things because he knows, folks are like, oh, crap, free money. Psh, yeah. Who's going to stop me, when there's free money out there? So that was cool. And then he eventually ends up at the armorer, which I thought was really cool because I've always wondered, like, what happened to her, you know? And she's kind of like this weird, almost like a Yoda version of a Mandalorian in a way. You see her, she's like meditating or just looking off into the stars or whatnot. And then, he he's injured. So, she's, has him get himself kind of taken care of with some back to spray. I guess that's what it was. And
not quite as good as the carrot juice that the Tuscans gave him, but
well, that was, they gave that to Boba. Yeah. But yeah, so he eventually, brings some stuff back and he's like, all right, I want something made for a fountain. She's like, well, make it for a foundling. Now, the interesting thing is like, the armorer is asking where did he get that spear from? And, he kind of gives the origin of it. And he's like, well, I can understand why. And I never thought about this, but yeah, it's made out of pure Beskar, which is cool, but it also can pierce Beskar too.
That I
and
thought
other
was
Mandalorians
really interesting.
Yeah, that was really interesting to me too. And I was like, you know what? I never thought about that. And he was kind of saying like, oh, it blocks a lightsaber, and all this stuff. But it's like, yeah, but other
Yeah, they're like,
Mandalorians might look
wait
at
a
that.
second though. Let's back up to the it can pierce Beskar part. It's yeah, the lightsaber thing, that's fine, but we're really more interested in this.
Exactly. So I thought that was pretty cool and informative. But then, of course, she kind of starts talking about the whole the legend of the dark saber and everything. And then there happens to be a member of House Vizsla, in their midst. So he's kind of like, well, that's kind of mine because it's my ancestry. But he's like, well, I won this in battle though, so sorry, and it's I'm really curious though to find out about this whole thing because as he was learning how to duel with the dark saber, she kept saying that like, okay, you're fighting against it, and that's why it kept becoming heavy and it kind of became a broadsword. So it was weird because it kind of started off with the original George Lucas version of a lightsaber.
Yeah, I thought of that too. That they sort of mirrored that. It's real heavy and unwieldy and that kind of thing. And I'm like, okay, I think that might be a nod to George Lucas right there. I don't know.
Yeah, exactly. I was kind of wondering the same thing, but and every time he kept trying to use it, it just kept weighing him down, and I'm like, okay, I gotta know why. I mean, it just seems weird, like, because you've never heard that ever before with any other light. So I don't know if it's specifically to the dark saber, or is it lightsabers in general?
I don't think it's
because other people have
lightsabers.
done it.
Right. And the thing is, other people have wielded lightsabers.
Right.
So I don't actually think that that's the issue. I think it is characteristic, because you got to remember that the Darksaber was created by a Mandalorian Jedi.
Mm-hmm.
And so because of that, I mean, you do have to wonder, well, what kind of weird mysticism is built into this weapon that it would do it? Because in a traditional lightsaber, it's kind of like, okay, you're using the Force, and it's almost like the Force is guiding the weapon a little bit. Whereas with this, it's more or less implied that, the weapon itself possesses some sort of almost sentient capabilities or some, exactly. I mean, and it's like, okay, you can work against this thing, but because first of all, I loved all the scenes between him and the armor. I thought that there was a lot of compelling dialogue there. I thought it was really, it was meaty. Yeah, rich and meaty. I think that you can really say that about pretty much this entire episode, is that there was a lot to digest in this thing. That's why I really wish I had a chance to watch it for a second time before tonight's show, because, last time I saw it was the day it premiered.
Right.
And thank goodness you're over there somehow walking us through this stuff. But because with this one, I mean, normally, I just like to just have a normal, we're just sitting around talking kind of conversation about it, which, I mean, we're still doing. But this is one of those episodes that really deserves to kind of go in a scene by scene, let's just talk about all that stuff. And this is definitely one of them, because they didn't really give you that much. I mean, she was telling you, you're fighting against it, you're doing all that stuff, but nobody really told you why.
Exactly.
It was kind of like, well, okay, so what's he supposed to do then? It reminds me.
I'm surprised he didn't even ask the question. Like, why didn't he even just ask? Like, okay, so what am I supposed to do?
Well, I think he kind of was maybe in a more indirect way, but it reminds me of something that you'd said when you were younger, where you're talking about how your grandmother was like, well, just think about it. And you're like, well, I don't know how. What are you talking about? I mean, I thought I was.
Exactly.
And that's basically what you get here, right? Where it's like, well, don't fight against it. Well, how do I do that?
Exactly.
I don't even know what I'm doing that is fighting against it. I'm just trying. There's an opponent on the other side. I'm just trying to block the guy's blows and maybe get a slice in here and there. I'm not trying to bend the will of my sword here. You know what I'm saying?
Right. I'm sorry. I didn't know there was a little person in here.
Right.
That,
exactly.
disagreed with me.
Yeah. Is there like a little engineer in this thing? I mean, is it, I mean, when you say don't fight against it, I'm thinking riding a motorcycle here. I'm not thinking, look, I'm wielding a sword. I didn't think that this was a factor.
Right. But, so he eventually, Dan eventually has to confront the other guy from House Vizsla, because he wants to compete for his
and you knew that was going to happen. I mean,
you
knew, because at first it was kind of like, all right, sort of begrudgingly, but I'm sitting there thinking to myself, like, yeah, you're not going to let this go, man.
Yeah, especially you being so close to it and no one has seen that thing in like forever.
That's the
that's
thing.
what I'm saying.
Yeah. No way.
So of course they decide to duel it out, and Den ends up being the victor. And however, then the armorer asked the question of, have you ever taken off your helmet? And of course, House Vizsla's like, nope, never. And I knew, I was like, ooh, I wonder how if he was gonna be able to get out of this one. And then, honestly, I give the man credit for just being an honest man. He said, yeah, I've taken it off, once.
Yeah, because he knew that was the thing. I mean, first of all, even going back to somewhat of the Darksaber thing, it was that whole duel. One of the things that I thought was cool was that they didn't make Din kind of, one of the complaints that I had about some of the earlier parts of the Mandalorian was I thought they underpowered him a little bit. Whereas you definitely now could see, okay, this guy, he can fight. He knows what he's doing. Um, but at the same time, you know, it was kind of nice though to see that it was still a struggle. And then now you're talking about the emotional struggle because all he had to do really is lie and say, nope, never took it off. But
Right.
this really goes and shows you that this is an honorable guy.
Mm-hmm.
You know, he's going to accept the consequences of his actions. And keeping in mind, one of the things that I really love that ties into this whole scene is when he started asking about Bo-Katan, because remember, now he's back with that, more zealous, kind of
Mm-hmm.
over the top Mandalorian faction. So, which of course he never knew existed before, right? He thought that he and his little group of Mandalorians were the only one, and this is the way. So I thought it was cool that he started asking her, like, hey, well, what about Bo-Katan and all these people? Because, they're all just taking off their helmets. They have this whole totally different way of dealing with things. And I
Mm-hmm.
thought it was kind of cool because you got to see the armorer's take on
Mm-hmm.
Bo-Katan and the rest of her, people too. Dwight joins us. So let me just sneak this in here because it is relevant to what we're talking about. He says, I was thrown off because Sabine wielded it. And that's one of the things that makes me really curious about this whole thing because, yeah, she got the Darksaber and she just, everything was cool. So how did she
Yeah,
not
but
fight
see,
against it? Now, granted, she
well, I
was,
think. Go ahead.
well, I'm trying to remember who trained. Remember when she had the Darksaber? Was it Obi-Wan? Somebody was training her
Mm-mm.
to fight, and I thought it was
Kanan.
a Kanan. I knew it was a Jedi. I just couldn't remember which one it
Mm-hmm.
was. So that never really came up. I mean, did you have an
Well, I was just
explanation?
I was gonna go with that part too. Like, well, she did kind of struggle a bit with it because Kanan had to show her how to deal with the lightsaber because she's not used to one. She's not used to dealing with like swords and stuff like that, especially made of like energy and stuff. And then the other thing too is that because she's actually like Mandalorian, she actually was around when all this stuff was kind of like she kind of really is a part of the culture as opposed to then he was never really a part because he was a foundling and there's some things that he may not have
Well,
gotten.
and he was also sheltered too because of this
Yeah, and then
particular
he's
faction. Because one of the things that I thought was a really nice touch is that you find out that this little faction are actually the Children of the Watch, which
Mhm.
we know that from Clone Wars lore and everything else,
Yeah.
that they tied that in. Now, I do think that was tied in, and that was answered by Bo-Katan in season 2 of The Mandalorian. I think they did mention it then, but it was still, nevertheless, a nice reveal that we
Yeah,
got, or at least a reminder, if that's the case.
definitely. And then so once that whole exchange happened, he took his belongings that the armorer made for basically little Grogu and
Yeah, what do you
he
think
went on
that
his way.
is?
It looked like a bunch of little earrings or something like that. Like maybe
Well,
because he's got those huge ears. I mean, maybe he's got like some for like
I
each.
mean, first of all, when it
I
was
don't know.
wrapped up, dude, it looked like a Valentine's Hershey's Kiss or something. I mean, to be completely honest. But
It's an edible arrangement, man.
the the
He's
ring
always eating
thing,
crap.
well, that's true. The ring thing, though, and this makes sense. There've been some that theorize that they made chainmail armor for him,
Mm,
which would explain the rings because you see a bunch of little rings dropping, and then all of a sudden there's this little Hershey's Kiss like tied up thing or whatever. That, I mean, I know he's small, but could it be a
mhm.
helmet? Could it be some armor? Um, yeah, I don't know.
Yeah,
Maybe it's a
yeah.
little frog statue or something. I mean, who knows? Just made out of Beskar, right? It's like a little
It could just
trinket
be
that you buy at Meijer or whatever.
it's an ID bracelet, man, from Zales or something.
There
I
you
don't know,
go.
but
But I'm
every
really
kiss begins
curious
with
on what
K.
that is. I mean, I'm just ultra curious because, and again, I think that a lot of what they're doing with this episode is that they're obviously catching you up to what Din's been up to while Boba's, all this time has transpired, because he was talking about, Boba I'm talking about, when he talks about the being trapped in the Sarlacc and all that, years have passed. A lot of time has passed. And of course, a lot of that's before he actually met Din. But I think that now that we're dealing mostly with the present in the Book of Boba Fett, they wanted to catch us up a little bit about what Din was doing. So it's almost acting as a prequel, so that way they don't have to address all this in season 3, right? They can just pick up where things left off. And I really think that that's what the other half of this is, besides to eventually connect him with Boba Fett himself. I think that the producers were trying to say, hey, this is kind of easing you into season 3 of The Mandalorian and setting up some storylines. What do you think?
Yeah, man, I think so. I mean, it's really kind of interesting because I think we're getting a lot of that. And like I said, we're getting that crossover stuff that we've always kind of talked about. And I guess we're really going to have to see how season 1 of Book of Boba Fett ends, to kind of see how Mandalorian might, pan out. Because I mean, I think we're going to find out about that whole present that he had for Grogu in season 3.
See,
I think that's the tease to kind of make us watch season 3. Not that we need it,
maybe, but here's what's confusing me, because I thought that, Obi-Wan here once thought as you do. What's confusing me about it, though, is the fact that, and again, I'm jumping ahead a little bit, but at the end, when Fennec basically approaches him, is like, listen, here's some money. We need your help. And he's just like, listen, I'll do this for free. I mean, it's Boba, but got something I got to do first. So it's almost implying that, I mean, this is what confuses me. It almost seems, just if you take this at face value, that they're going to actually deal with Din and Grogu and all that in this show. The only way that I can see around that is if what they do is they say, okay, he's got to go off and check on Grogu, right? We get a couple, because how many more episodes? 2 more.
I think
2 more.
Yeah.
6 and 7. So let's say 6 rolls around. Okay, maybe Boba's like recruiting a bunch of other people, some adventure, whatever. Then the season finale hits, episode 7. Din comes back and participates in the battle. He's contacted Grogu, whatever. They may leave it at that, or when season 3 of The Mandalorian picks up, it's like, yeah, you remember when he went off to see Grogu? Well, here's what happened.
Here's what happened. Exactly.
Yeah, they might actually show it to you in season 3, but he went off to do it, and then he came back, and that's what we see in this show. And then...
Right. Much like we were seeing what Din was doing in Book of Boba Fett. While Boba was doing his thing, we're seeing what Din was doing at the same time.
Right.
Yeah,
exactly.
And that's what I'm saying. And that's kind of where I was going with it. It's like, I think we're going to see that crossover thing where you kind of see what the other person was doing in each other's shows. Then, so I guess like after he gets the little foundling, chainmail or, ID
whatever
bracelet or whatever he got made for him. You
went to Jared or whatever.
Right. Exactly. He takes off. He needs another ship. He thinks that he's getting a Razor Crest or another Razor Crest.
Which was so funny, that whole thing. It's like, don't you have one?
Yeah, he pops over to Tatooine again, and now we're seeing like, okay, how he could possibly come into contact with Boba because he's on Tatooine now. And he runs into, the lady who I can't remember her name.
I know. I can never remember her name. And she's become such a central character. And the thing is, I figured she might pop up because if you remember, it was either the last episode or it was either 3 or 4 that they kind of showed, the little stormtrooper helmets on the pole to reference the Mandalorian a little bit. And then you saw her walking with the droids. Yeah,
Yeah.
and it's kind of like, okay, that's a pretty specific cameo. I have a feeling that she's going to factor into everything at some point,
Hmm.
and lo and behold, 1 or 2 episodes later, front
There
and
she be.
center.
Yeah, man. And she didn't disappoint, man. I mean, like, she always cracks me up because she's just so she seems like she's off Roseanne. That's what she reminds
I
me of, like a
know,
character off Roseanne.
totally. And you know what's funny about her? It's almost like an Ahsoka thing. I really didn't like her on the
At first,
first
yeah.
on the first episode of The
Yep.
Mandalorian she was in. I really I
Didn't care
didn't
for it,
yeah,
yeah.
I didn't totally hate her. I just didn't like her. But then the second episode in The Mandalorian that she was in, I thought she was a much cooler character. And then now this, which is her third appearance. I mean, I'm not counting the cameo of her just walking, but the third appearance, that I was all about it for this. Like, I
Yeah, I
really
mean,
enjoyed her character in this episode.
yeah, exactly. And just the jokes, and she brought the levity, man. I mean,
Oh
like
man, yes.
when she was talking about when he's like, "Well, what's your little friend?" He's like, "Oh, I give him back to his own kind." She's like, "Well, what'd you do that for? We could have made some money off."
I mean, that's the
She's
thing,
like a petting zoo, man. I was like on the floor
oh
when she
yeah.
said that.
The chemistry between her and Din is just so good. I mean, you know
Yeah,
what? If they ever just did a spin-off show with those two, I'd be fine with that. I mean,
that's gonna be the next thing of Star Wars Visions.
right. The banter. No, because see, the problem with Star Wars Visions is they give you a bunch of people, you have no idea who they are, and you have
Right.
no idea what era they're in, and you're
Well,
just
we still don't know her name, so it's kind of like that already.
kind of, although she has it. It's funny because that's the thing, and it's every time I see her name anywhere, I always say, you know what, I'm going to remember that. Like, I'm going to make a point to remember this because I used to be that guy, that encyclopedic guy that I could tell you every
Hmm.
character's name, and I don't know when exactly it happened, but I completely lost that. I mean, I'll be reading
Life.
books and stuff, and then characters come up and I'm like, "Oh man, yeah, what was her name?" I mean, I don't know. I
Yeah.
chalk it up to a stress thing, but yeah, I mean, that whole
Yeah, her
thing when
character
she
was really good though.
Oh, it was. And especially when she started going off on the whole, like, that she used to date
Jawa thing.
Jawas and, they're
Oh my
furry
god.
underneath and all
Hurry.
this stuff.
When she did that, I was kind of like, where are you going with this? Because that was a little, I was like,
I know, that was a little
you know,
TMI.
because she kept doing that. I was like,
And then
okay.
when she started speaking Jawa, dude, it actually cracked
Man,
me up.
yeah.
See, it had the opposite effect on me. Like in Solo, when they had Han speaking Sri Wook.
Wookie or Shri Wook, yeah.
Yeah, I mean, I got it, but I thought it was weird. This, I just thought it was kind of funny and adorable almost, because if you think about it, if a human being is going to communicate with this other alien in their language, it's going to sound weird, and I thought that
Hmm.
they captured that because they make it in a lot of cases to where either they have to have a protocol droid or somebody that can interpret for them, or they just sort of write the scene where even though maybe the alien doesn't speak basic, they understand it. Kind of like a Chewbacca situation.
Well, the
Whereas
other thing,
here, you had the person actually speaking their language, which I actually thought was a nice touch.
oh yeah, definitely. And the other thing is kind of like we're starting to see a little bit more of that because, like you said, Han was speaking Shri Wook in Solo. Then
Hmm.
you got her speaking Jawa, or and then now you got Boba, at least doing sign language with the
With
Sand
the
People,
Tuscans, which
which
of
is yeah,
course Din
so
did in The Mandalorian first. That's where we
yeah,
really first saw that. So yeah,
yeah.
exactly. Yeah. So I
So it's
thought
kind of
that was
like
cool.
okay, yeah, definitely. So, she basically, Dan pretty much is under the impression that she has a new Razor Crest for him, and she's like, "No, I got something better." So he was like, "Okay, well, let's see it." And he brings in a Naboo starfighter. And I'm like, wow,
I know.
that's just crazy. Like,
It is
why
kind
would
of
you?
wild because it really brings you back to that era, and it I don't know, there was something that was kind of emotional about it because you're seeing something from the prequel era dropped in the post Return of the Jedi era.
Exactly.
And yet it was dilapidated enough and everything that it was kind of sad. Um but before we get any further in this, I just want to get to a couple more Dwight's chats. By the way, Dwight and anybody else that may be watching this is a really good time to hit that like button for us. I mean, you're probably already subscribed, although if there's anybody out there that are watching this now and haven't subscribed, make sure you hit the subscribe button too, because you're definitely going to want to participate or at least see these discussions that we're having. Nothing else, it's a good way to spend time. But Dwight, hit the like button. Anybody else that's watching now, hit that like button. Help us out. Speaking of Dwight, let's get to some of these chats here. So he says, I think Luke and Grogu will be in episode 6. I have to admit, at first, when he had made that comment, like, yeah, I got to go off and, see him or whatever, I did think that, I wonder, but if this were a 10 episode thing, I would agree, but I don't think so, only because this is called the Book of Boba Fett, and they still have a lot of Boba Fett story they got to cram into 2 more episodes. So I really thought, and honestly, I didn't really even formulate the whole thing until I was just talking to you just now, where I really think it's just going to be like, yeah, I just got to go take care of this first. And then maybe in episode 7, we'll see Din come back to help Boba. Yeah, I've taken care of the Grogu thing. He's fine. And then when the season 3 of The Mandalorian hits, that's when we're actually going to see what transpired during that time. Okay. And Dwight's like, LOL, or I think he meant furry.
Furry.
Yeah. Yeah, I thought that was great too. And then he says, isn't her name Pelly or Pelly? Yeah,
Yes.
I think so, yeah.
Yeah, Pelly.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Which, honestly, that's a real easy name to remember.
Definitely.
I don't know why I don't, why
I think it's because I don't see her enough, so that's why I don't really commit her to memory, because she's not someone that I just see all the time.
Right. And, it's really interesting, too, because I try to think back to when I was a kid. I don't know if I would get her action figure or not. I mean, it's kind of one of those characters where you could, if you were like playing out different adventures or scenes or something, you could do it. But I don't know if she's enough of a character that would warrant more, I mean, other than just like certain scenes or something like that. Because there were some action figures back in the day that, I mean, unless you were really trying to act out a specific scene from the movie, like for instance, I had Hammerhead, I had Walrus Man, as they called them. I had some of the other Cantina guys. I never got the Cantina band figures. I never got Snaggletooth. There was a couple of figures I didn't get just because, well, I mean, first of all, they were, I mean, it wasn't like you could just buy like 10 of them at a time. You had to be careful. I mean, if your parents were saying like, okay, you can have 1 or 2, you're going to go, like, for instance, the other thing too is I had 1 of each of the different kinds of stormtroopers, but they would show those commercials. You see these kids that have like 10 stormtroopers surrounding Vader. And that's what you really wanted as a kid. Instead of, oh, the Empire's coming, and it's like Vader and 1 stormtrooper and maybe a snowtrooper and a biker scout or something. I mean, like, well,
just the rest is your imagination.
Yeah, kind of, you really have to stretch. And so therefore, that's one of the things about her that this is more of a, an adult perspective where you appreciate the character and what she's bringing to the show and the scene and all that. But I don't, like you said, that's why I don't think I remember her name either, is because she's not that action figure kind of marquee name. You know what I mean?
Right. She's not prominent enough.
Right, not
But
prominent
she's
enough.
cool.
She is cool.
But she's so, you know, she kind of shows him the starfighter and he's just like, are you serious? He's just like,
Man, that was
first
the
of all, this thing is
funniest.
not even like, but then she was like, well, look, if just let me finish fixing her up and then you can tell me, yay or nay. I'll give you your money back. It's fine. So he's like, fine. So of course, he begrudgingly kind of helps her because she's like, well, this would go a lot faster if you helped. So of course now
That's the
he's
thing,
got to
man.
like,
There were just so many funny lines in this thing.
oh man, she had
Just
so
this
many
whole
great
scene.
ones.
She did, he did when he was interacting with the
Yeah,
drive. I mean, everything was just great.
absolutely. And then they finally kind of, the cool thing I love about it though, he still kind of kept that gunmetal, that sheen, that almost Mandalorian Beskar look to the Naboo, which was really sweet actually. Like I really liked that better than that bright yellow they had.
Well,
You
but you got to
know,
remember, if you remember, that was what Padme's ship looked like. She had the
yeah,
full silver one. And I
yeah.
did wonder, is that Padme's ship?
Oh, at
Because,
first,
yeah, because the Jedi starfighters were more that yellow and all that stuff and some of the stuff. But the actual high up Naboo royalty were the ones that had that just sleek silver, chromed out version.
well, those were the actual. I guess if you want to say like, uh,
Well, I know they were a little
the
bit
bigger,
more, yeah,
they're more like that. That was like more her Millennium Falcon as opposed to like he was flying an X-wing. You know what I
yeah,
mean? For all
yeah,
intents and
yeah.
purposes.
Well, and I mean, it was
So
really more like the Jedi starfighters because the
yeah.
Naboo, they made kind of a. I mean, I forgot like what the shipyard was called, but they made the Jedi starfighters as well. So I mean, they could
Yeah.
have, it would just be interesting. Again, it's the geek in me. I would like to see what the history of that particular ship is. Like, what was it doing back in the prequel era?
Mhm. Well, I mean, and I think that's one of the things she said was like one of the Royal Guard, ships or whatever that
It
kind of
could be.
protected the
Yeah,
Queen and
yeah,
stuff.
it could be.
So,
Some guy
but
named
they
Frank
finally
had
got
it or
in.
something. It has no history really whatsoever. It's just some pedestrian thing.
Right. But I really did like the modification that they did to it, like as far as, and I thought, that was cool what she was saying, like, oh, it has its own hyperdrive, like it can go on the hyperdrive on its own without like a ring, like a Jedi used to have to use
Yep,
the
like
hyperdrive
Obi-Wan
rings.
always did. Yep.
Yeah, so you didn't have to have one of those. Um, some of the other things was that because it's old enough, it's completely off the Imperial manifest. So they don't even know what ship that is. So they can't even track that. And then of course, they put a lot of horsepower into that stupid little thing,
Yeah,
man.
it's funny because the whole time that was playing, I kept thinking, okay, this is the Fast and Furious portion of this episode.
Exactly. Yep.
Kept expecting, like, Vin Diesel
Dom to
as
pop
Dom
up.
to come out. Exactly.
but, um, but yeah, when it was all, ready to go, he hops in it and uh she's kind of trying to teach him like, okay, how to fly the thing. So, he's kind of putting around, flying around Tatooine or whatnot, Mos Eisley, and he's going to Beggar's Canyon, which I thought was cool. And
Hmm.
it kind of took us back to the whole pod race because that's what I thought it was at first when she first brought that thing out. Before she pulled the cover off, I was like, "Is that a pod racer?"
Well, and it
But
kind
then I
of,
was
I mean,
like,
when she started it up and all that stuff, it sounded like that. I
"Mm-hmm,
mean, it sounded more like the pods. It kind of had that same engine sound that Sebulba's pod had.
yeah." And so he's flying around Beggar's Canyon, man. But he's just like, "All right, well, let's just see what this thing can really do." And then he, actually takes it into space. And then of course he's just kind of cruising along. He sees that one little kid that he was on the transport with earlier, which was kind of fun, the little Rhodian.
Yeah.
So,
Yeah.
so that was cool.
That whole scene, the whole typical, what that reminded me of is a lot of the superhero movies, particularly the DC ones, and usually it's Superman, where it'll be
Yeah,
like
like
some little kid and they see Superman outside flying, and there's all, they always do some scene like that or whatever. And that's totally reminded me of. The other weird thing, and this is actually going back in the episode, but it's worth addressing. So there's two things. Number one, it was really weird to see him flying a commercial airline where he's just basically, in first class or something. But here was the thing, and again, it's kind of jumping around a little bit, but I'm convinced now, and this has been going all over the internet, but I promise you, before I was reading all these people's articles, I said this while I was watching the episode. It is time to give Bryce Dallas Howard her own Star Wars film. This is somebody who really gets Star Wars, and here's a good example. So he's about to fly commercial.
Oh, yeah.
He's putting all his crap in the trunk. He puts the Darksaber in there. You're kind of like, dude, this thing is one of the rarest things in the entire Star Wars universe. And the way that all this is going, and he was arguing with the porter or whatever, yeah. See, that could have been a really silly scene in the hands of a lesser director. But you actually felt suspense and everything, because when he landed and he opened that trunk back up, most people, I think, like me, expected that Darksaber to be gone. And when it wasn't, you kind of had that release after the tension.
Well, yeah, that's one of the funny things too is how he tried to kind of get out of it. The fact that she was like, "Oh yeah, you have to leave your weapons." He was like, "Well, I'm a Mandalorian. It's part of my religion."
Yeah, man, that was one of the funniest lines. And again, this is really good writing and really good directing, and that was such a great scene. And just seeing him flying commercial, and he's kind of like, "I hate this," But
yeah, he's so uncomfortable because
he's so uncomfortable.
I got kids in front of me. I got a parent. He's just like, I have my own ship. This is what I'm used to. No, I totally get it.
Anybody that's been on a plane can relate to this.
Yeah, definitely.
So now he gets his own ship, which of course isn't what he expected, but he's kind of like taking it through his thing.
Yeah, he's opening up. He's kind of taking it into space, and then of course, he's cruising along. He runs into
the other funny scene.
Yes, the New Republic.
He gets pulled over by the cops, basically.
Basically. And, he's trying to he's always almost out of there.
Yep.
And then that one guy kind of spots him. It's kind of like, "Hey, did you have a Razor Crest?" And he's just like, "No, I think you got the wrong guy."
Interesting tidbit. The younger pilot guy.
Mm-hmm.
He was actually the Luke Skywalker double for the season finale of The Mandalorian.
I thought he looked familiar.
Yeah, he was like the double or something that they used.
Mm.
But yeah, I mean, that was just an interesting tidbit. But it was, yeah, he was almost out of there. They start asking him these questions, and again, I thought that was really cool because it's world building without it feel like world building. I mean, first of all, the whole scene was just hilarious. That he's getting pulled over by the cops, essentially. Because when you really, and again, Star Wars is fantasy. It's more about macro than micro. It's more thematic than literal. But it is nice once in a while to see some of the minutia of the way the galaxy works. Because it does stand to reason. And anybody that's read the novels knows, you might have the Republic or New Republic or whatever era it is, boarding your ship, making sure that everything's cool, trying to bust smugglers, that kind of thing, if they're going in that direction with the story. So it's kind of nice to see that, yes, the New Republic is trying to clean up the galaxy, is trying to establish its authority and everything else. And there is a definite, I guess what you would call more police presence, that's there. And I thought that besides being comic relief, I thought that scene was actually, it served the story very well.
Yeah, and especially, they finally asked him a question, and he was just like, yeah, and the way he booked it out of there.
Yeah, I know.
Man. And of course the young guy was like, dude, how did he? And the guy's like, oh, he just has, whatever, whatever. And he's like, well, should we go after him? He's like, well, look, do you really want to go back to headquarters to base and have to write reports, or do you want to stay out here and just kind of? He's like, yeah, all right, yeah, we'll just stay here. So he kind of lands and he's like, man, he's like, he goes back to Pelly. He's like, yeah, this thing is kicking, it's humming. He's just like, yep, see, told you, like you be the fastest like dude out there. Like no one's gonna catch you.
Yeah, razor what?
Exactly. So, and then of course, as he's about to leave, he hears this voice, call out to him, and of
All right,
course
but
now,
before you get to that, I got one more thing I got to
okay,
say about this ship. I mean, yes, we all caught the little like gun part where it's the perfect size for Grogu. I mean, we all know that. But here's the thing that I find interesting about him getting this essentially Naboo fighter.
hmm
Where's he going to put bounties?
well, that's what I was saying. Or like my thing is like if he takes a direct hit from like a bigger ship,
Oh
dude, he's
yeah.
over. It's over
Oh
with for
yeah,
him.
yeah, done. I
Like
mean,
I don't think
unless
that thing has shields, so
well, it might. I
but
mean,
it
it's got
probably
a
won't be strong enough
hyperdrive,
to.
right? I mean, there's been a
Well,
ton of
but something's had to
modifications.
go. Yeah, but I mean, like you get hit by something, by like a gunship or something like that. Like just the caliber of the blast would probably like take out that the little ship if it had shields.
Well, and I mean, the only thing that I could say in answer to that is maybe the thing is so fast and maneuverable, what's going to hit it?
Yeah, I
But more
mean,
importantly, he's a bounty hunter. Where's he going to put his bounties?
I know, right?
He's going to have to
He
like
can't.
tow a trailer or something. It's
Everybody's got to be a severed head now. It's going to be like, all right, let's
yeah,
stick this
man. I
in the
mean, I
back.
guess you're just going to, I guess it's going to bring it in. I could bring you in cold, and yeah, that's about the only option I got, man. My ship's kind of small. I was going to give you the option of bringing in warm or cold, but limited space, so I'm going to have to kill you.
Yep. So finally, he hears his voice call out to him, and it's good old Fennec Shan. And that's cool because that's what she went to go do. She went to go find more muscle, and so when she sees him, she's like, okay.
You know what trips me out is that Ming-Na Wen is like
Says,
50. She's 59 years old, man.
I mean, no way.
Yeah.
Wow.
I mean,
And
I
yeah,
mean,
she's in
it's a
impressive shape.
tangent that I just went off on. I realize that. I mean, I know that it has nothing other than
Of course, she's
I'm just
she's in
saying.
good shape, though, man.
Well, I'm just saying it just surprised me. I just happened to be reading something about her or whatever, and they said her age, and I mean, it stands to reason because you know what's funny? I was introduced to her probably the same way you were when she played Chun-Li in Street Fighter, the movie with Van Damme and Raul Julia and all that. And I remember I sort of kept track of her the whole time, and it was really interesting. Oh man, I think we lost Daryl. Hopefully he comes back in soon. But yeah, I thought it was really fascinating that she was so. I mean, she's been around for a while, so it stands to reason, but it just kind of, I don't know. I realized it was a tangent, but, that's how it goes. You know how I am. I'm just going to actually leave Daryl frozen on the screen because, number one, he might pop back in. And number two, even if he doesn't, kind of fills up that other box, to be honest. So we'll just have to see. I'm going to text him now. Just going to tell him that we're on. Sign back in. All right. Anyway. So yeah, I mean, basically this thing, runs into Fennec Shan, and pretty much from there, we see that, okay, she pretty much is offering Din the opportunity to actually, hey, join up, right? And we knew that was going to happen because, look, in all honesty, you had a situation where the last episode, maybe even the last couple episodes, because there was the one where Fennec Shan and Boba were camping or whatever, or no, it was before Boba hooked up when they were telling the background story of Fennec and how Fennec and Boba met. And basically what had happened was when he looked out into the distance or whatever, and you saw this light take off, right? And this was supposed to coincide with the scene where Mando was taken off from Tatooine and Boba was about to find her or whatever. And what was funny about it was, oh wait, I think Daryl's back. Daryl's back. So I could stop doing the dance. There you are.
Okay.
Yeah. No, you were just kicked off, man.
Oh.
Yeah, your screen
Okay,
froze, and we've been on the whole time, so I just kind of had to take it. But I mean,
cool.
I was basically talking about how we had some foreshadowing of the whole Mandalorian scene, where in the last episode, where when Boba and Fennec met, and you saw that light take off, and they played a little bit of the Mandalorian theme, and then of course at the end, when they played a little bit of the Mandalorian theme, when he was like, "I got to get some muscle," we all knew what was going to happen. It's like, yeah. In fact, I think we even called it, and I'm sure the rest of the world that has YouTube shows did too, where it's like, we're going to see Din in the next episode. What we didn't know was we were only going to see Din in the next episode.
Right.
That's where it got a little, it was a little bit different. Oh, it's funny when you were frozen, because I just sort of left you on there for a while because it filled up the other square. Dwight says that Daryl is frozen in carbonite, but he's very well preserved.
Oh.
If he survived the freezing process, that is.
Nice, Dwight.
But yeah, so he hooked up. I was basically saying, did you hear the part? I don't remember where you cut off, because I just happened to notice. I'm like, oh, he's sitting awfully still. But I was talking about we were first introduced to Ming-Na when she played Chun-Li in Street Fighter.
Yeah.
And that was when I basically, and I pretty much kept track of her career the whole time. I would kind of keep up with her a little bit. So when I found out that she was cast in The Mandalorian at first, and that she was playing this character Fennec Shand, I thought that was pretty cool. So yeah, so she approaches him, tries to hand him a fistful of credits.
Yeah, pretty much. He's just like, oh, it's for Boba, it's on the house, basically. He's like, but I got to take care of something first, and basically he wanted to go see Grogu.
And I think that was really cool that he was basically like, oh, Boba, yeah, I'll do this one for free.
Yeah, because, he owes him, like, look.
Yeah, well, I mean, and I like the relationship between Din and Boba. I think it's cool. Because the trap would be to just, have them either be rivals or maybe frenemies kind of thing. You know what I mean? I could see there is that trap, and they actually
it could still happen at some point.
Well, yeah, that's true. I mean, the door's open, right? And it could also be circumstantial. Right. Almost like how Han and Boba were, where it's kind of like, sometimes we're on opposite sides of the whole situation, and other times we're teamed up. That could be. Or almost like what happened with Din and Greef. Or Greef. I could see something like that too. But honestly, I hope that doesn't happen, because I really like them being pretty cool with each other and friends, and pretty much willing to, help each other
Scratch each
out.
other's back.
Yeah, because you don't
Yeah.
really, I mean, honestly, even with the Star Wars universe and stuff like that, you don't see that much. You see that with what you would call almost the pure good guys. But you don't see that with the more neutral characters of the villains. Yeah, you would expect that with the villains because they're villainous. They don't exactly have the highest moral code, although some of them are honorable at least. So, I mean, it's a relationship type that you don't really see very often. And I think it actually has room for, well, it does two things. One, it can give you a little bit more in-depth storylines, but the other, it invites crossover, like what we're seeing right now.
Mm-hmm.
So yeah, I mean, exactly. It just the whole thing with Fennec Shan, and then he says, I gotta go take care of something first, and then pretty much the episode ends there, does it not?
Yeah, pretty much.
And in typical fashion, it's usually the end of the episode where now you're kind of into it, and you're like, no, don't end it here.
Right.
I want to see another 10 or 15 minutes of this thing. Although I will say,
Yeah.
I'm very, very happy that they're starting now to have longer episodes.
Mm-hmm.
Because this thing was 40-some minutes, I think.
Yeah.
And I honestly think that we're going to get I'm convinced that the season finale, episode 7, is probably going to be around an hour. And I'm thinking that the next episode's going to be at least 45.
Yeah, I can see that.
Yeah.
I can definitely see that.
So what's your overall thoughts?
Overall, I mean, this is a great episode for me. I mean, I got so much, everything I wanted. I got information, I got levity, I got some action, I got some world building, character development, all of that. So for me, I mean, it was a perfect episode. I would give it a 10. It was a perfect episode for me.
Yeah, I was going to say the same thing. 10. This episode was flawlessly executed. It was really good. It gave us a lot of lore. It gave us a lot of background. It set us up and gave us a little bit of excitement for The Mandalorian Season 3. It connected some threads between even what we saw with Boba Fett in Season 2 of The Mandalorian and now, because we were seeing where Boba Fett was going, but now we see where Din is going. And I think in a way it was actually smarter to play it out like this, because they could have very easily have either had that last scene could have been the first scene of the episode where Fennec approaches Din for, he just happens. Of course, everybody then would be like, oh, he just happened to be on Tatooine, that kind of thing. But, they could have just called out to him and then he just flew in some ship or whatever and started helping him out. But they actually took the time to say, no, we're going to fill in the gaps. They gave us some fantastic dialogue and scenes with the armor and shining a little bit of light on how the Children of the Watch are viewing the overall Mandalorian situation. Because I'm starting to think now more than ever that Mandalorian Season 3 is going to deal a lot with the Mandalore thing. And especially...
Oh, yeah.
Because you do have to remember, although they cast Sabine Wren in Ahsoka, I would not be surprised if maybe she appears first. I guess it depends on which show comes out first. But let's just put it this way. I'll keep it more evergreen and just say, I think she's going to appear somewhere in The Mandalorian Season 3. I could be wrong, but I think that you're going to see that. Especially because now they're bringing the whole House Vizsla thing into it. That was a little bit of a surprise. You're getting a lot of Clone Wars references now.
Definitely.
So, I mean, I think that that's really important. So, yeah, solid 10. Dwight gives it a 10. I would really like to eventually give an episode that features Boba Fett a 10. Because, honestly, it's like I said, this could have been an episode of The Mandalorian.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, it really could have. And in essence,
Definitely.
it was.
That's basically, yeah.
It's kind of like, I thought this was the Book of Boba Fett. This is the soft premiere of The Mandalorian Season 3. But
It was a way for them to get an extra episode in. So now technically it's have, 11 episodes instead of just 10.
yeah.
Aha.
Well, and I think that what could end up happening is they're going to set up the possibility of more crossover between the two shows. Obviously, it'll cross over into Ahsoka. So I think we're really going to get a nice, rich universe during this time period. So it's going to be really interesting to see. So absolutely. But the important thing, of course, is what did you guys think? Now, once again, if you haven't hit that like button, hit the like button because it really does help our channel. It helps our growth. It helps us put us in front of more people, which obviously is very important, especially more people we get chatting in, the more people that are participating in the discussion, whether it's in the chat or the comments, the better the show is. So help us out with that one. For this Friday, do we have any idea what we're talking about? This is becoming a tradition now. I almost do this on purpose, where I try to see if there's anything, that you're thinking right now.
I always say no on purpose. Because...
I know you do. And it's funny because we really go through the same exercise all the time. Like, this is almost pointless for me to do this, but I find myself doing it. I guess it's kind of a cheesy way of us doing a tease. I go, hey man, are we doing any, what we're going to do? And you say no. But if you watch Friday, you'll find out.
You'll definitely find out.
And then, of course, I'll just go ahead and say the usual thing I always say. Well, there's a lot of things that are popping up in the Star Wars universe. So, stay tuned and check us out. We will be back on this Friday night at 8 p.m. Eastern, so you're not going to want to miss that. Chat live with us. Share the video with all your friends. That helps too. You guys actually share our episodes on your social media? That would be wonderful. I mean, either people are going to love it or we'll have more people to hate us. Either way. But, yep, we will see you guys Friday as we prepare for this giant snowstorm that's supposed to hit us. It'll be interesting.
Yes, it's going to look... Yes, Michigan is going to actually look like Hoth.
Yes,
in about
Michigan's going to look like Hoth.
Hoth.
And that's the thing that's going to be interesting, too, because a lot of times I've noticed that sometimes during these crazy storms and all this other stuff, our internet gets a little bit spotty. So,
yep.
The outdoors may not be the only thing that freezes. You might experience another thing like you did. But anyway, guys, thanks for joining us on this episode. Of course, Monday night at 8, the plan is the same. Now, I do have another work thing that could extend it. So I'm going to warn you guys now. Friday is cool. We're going to be on at a normal time at 8 o'clock. Monday, it could be another one of those. We're going to be on at 10:30, or maybe we have to push it to Tuesday. So just keep watching YouTube, watch your emails. If you hit the notification bell, you'll be alerted to when we go live or we have a new episode. So with that, I'm Eric Vansel.
I'm Daryl Sanders.
May the Force be with you.
Always.
Head to Head, a Star Wars podcast. Be sure to follow us on Twitter @HeadToHeadSW. Submit your questions for our next show. Visit our official website at headtoheadswpodcast.com. Until next time, may the Force be with you, always.